I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have all the right words. I'm tired. I haven't slept. I hardly eat. I'm just exhausted. I feel like I'm in a nightmare.
We hurt. You can't ever be prepared for nothing like this.
As my godfather, how can you promise me that you're going to take care of my auntie and you take her away from me?
This is the police pulling 39-year-old Zachary Fuqua, a father of three, away in handcuffs after he had just buried his mother. Just a few moments later, he would be found after killing his wife in the presence of their three children in their home. And this is Erica's family asking the question no family member should ever have to ask. How did someone who claimed to love her become the reason she would never come home? So how does a mother of four, someone who was loved by everyone around her, end up murdered while her children watched, inside the very home where they were supposed to feel safest? And how did the multiple warning signs, the social media posts about being broken, drowning, and going out with a bang, the online cries from a man who seemed to be spiraling right in front of everyone, go unnoticed until it was already too late? Erica Sanders was born on January 1st, 1985, and living in Centerline, Michigan, a small community just north of Detroit. Centerline was the kind of place where people expected ordinary problems, the usual neighborhood disagreements, and maybe a few petty disputes over things like parking spaces, noisy dogs, or children playing in the wrong yard. Just the kind of everyday frustrations that would start up quickly and end quickly too, because in small towns people still have to see each other at the shopping store or on the streets. It was the kind of place where a major violent crime would stand out, because it was not something people expected to happen right next door. But on one evening in March 2026, the peace in the neighborhood would change, because inside one of those homes was a mother fighting for her life, and there was nothing anyone could do to change what had happened. To the people who knew Erica, she was a mother who loved her children deeply. She had 4 children. Her family described her as someone who cared about others and someone who wanted the best for the people around her, even the same person who would later put a bullet in her head. I would get to that in a moment. However, Erica was carrying a grief that never really left her. In May of 2024, her mother, Kimberly Ann Sanders, passed away. For Erica, the loss was crushing. She posted online about how her sleep had been off, how she hadn't been the same since that day. It was the kind of raw honesty that showed just how deeply the pain had settled into her life. But even in the middle of that grief, Erica kept showing up for her children and running her business, kept building the life she wanted. She was the type of person people called when they would need support, and like many mothers, her children were at the center of everything she did. They were her reason to work hard every day. But Erica wanted more when it came to love. She had the love from her children, but she was lonely. She wanted that love between a man and a woman. And for a moment, it seemed like she had finally found it. She met and began a relationship with a man called Zachary Fuqua. Zachary was 39 years old, just a year older than Erica. On paper, it looked like a normal relationship. 2 adults, both with children, trying to build a life together. And like so many stories that later end in tragedies, like what we're about to discuss, it began with happiness. The kind of happiness that makes you believe it will last forever. For Erica, there was no reason to think otherwise. Zachary had a child of his own, and people who knew him described him as a hands-on father. He showed up for school events, for birthdays, for the little moments that matter. He was there. Maybe it was because he was his mother's only child, nobody could say for sure, but he was often seen around close to family, especially his mom. They shared a bond that looked unbreakable. To outsiders, Zachary was a man who valued family ties above all else. Which makes what I'm about to tell you happened in this story is hard to believe. Meanwhile, Erica and Zachary's relationship seemed steady. They laughed, they built routines, they even moved in together. It looked like the start of something solid. For someone who claimed to love family, you'd think that's what Zachary would want with Erica. A home, a stable life, the kind of life he always seemed to value. But things began to change really fast, which makes what I'm about to tell you hard to believe. Because where these would all start wasn't just in arguments between 2 people in a relationship. It was something greater. In April 2022, Zachary lost his mother. But this wasn't the first time he would lose a parent. When he was only 13 years old, he lost his father. For a boy that young, The loss of a parent is like having the ground pulled out from under you. It leaves scars that don't fade, no matter how old you get. And now, he has lost his mother too. The person he was closest to, the one he leaned on more than anyone else. For a man who had already carried the weight of losing his father, this second loss was crushing. And that's the moment everything would shift. Zachary did not remain the same again. He began to share several posts on Facebook talking about how losing his mother was messing with his mental health. Post about feeling overwhelmed, broken, and tired of suffering. Messages that, looking back after the shooting, many people saw differently. His moods grew darker. His behavior became more unpredictable. For Erica, the change was impossible to deal with. The partner she thought she knew was changing to someone she no longer recognized. He was acting strange and she didn't know how to help him. According to Erica's family, Erica reached a point where she no longer wanted to continue. This was no longer the kind of relationship she wanted, not for herself or for her kids. But in stories like these, leaving is never as simple as everyone thinks, because Eric's decision to walk away came after Zachary's world had already begun to spiral, and that spiraling would set off a chain of events that would turn deadly. According to later reports, when Erica expressed her feeling of wanting to end the relationship, Zachary was not ready to accept that she wanted to leave him. This is where the story begins to take a darker turn. Zachary's behavior online would only increase after the breakup, and it was drawing more attention. Because he didn't have to only deal with his mother, but now the end of his relationship too. Meanwhile, Erica was also making her own feelings clear. She also posted messages on social media saying she's single and ready to mingle. It appeared to be a sign that she was trying to move on with her life. On March 11, Erica posted again, but this time, she updated her Facebook cover photo. The image carried a message that read, "I am unavailable. No, you cannot have me." To her friends, it looked like a declaration of independence, a sign that she was drawing boundaries and reclaiming her life. But to Zachary, it was something else entirely. Social media has a way of turning private emotions into public statements, and for men already spiraling, those statements can feel like daggers. Zachary didn't like that. To him, he thought Erica is supposed to be down for him, be there with him as he struggles to get his mind right. He took to Facebook to express how he felt.
And I'm hating over here. That's how I love, bro. I want to see everybody win. Everybody chasing the goal. I ain't in competition with nobody.
A few hours before she would be, Erica made one last post that carried the weight of someone who was airing out her mind. But what Erica didn't know was that her posts would get Zachary to a breaking point. According to prosecutors, at around 5:30 in the evening of March 17, 2026, Erica and Zachary were in their home when they started arguing. No one knows what the argument was about, but you can take a wild guess. Within several minutes of arguing, the situation would take a deadly turn. At one point during the argument, Zachary got extremely angry and decided to kill Erica. He took out a gun and shot her in the back of her head, then he ran off. But what was more chilling was Erica's children were right there in the house. They saw everything. The place that should have been their family's safe space had just become the scene of a investigation. When officers arrived at the home, they found Erica's body laying face down with the wound in her head. They immediately tried to save her, but sadly, she would not make it. Now, the police already had a description of who had shot Erica given to them by the children, but what the children would share with police after the shooting would make this case even more difficult for people to understand. They said that before leaving the house, Zachary gave the children candy, a small gesture that, in the middle of such a horrific situation, left many people shocked. Prosecutors described it as a disturbing moment because of how calm the action appeared to Zachary after such a violent thing he did. But even while authorities were searching for him, Zachary didn't go quiet. He kept on posting several messages on Facebook, almost as if the world needed to hear his side of the story in real time. One of the messages that gained attention was chilling. "Going out with a bang. Damn, this is it. The truth finally came out." To investigators, those posts didn't read like random messages. They were more like a confession, or at least a man announcing the end of his own story. It was the kind of message that makes you stop scrolling, the kind that forces you to wonder what's going on in Zachary's mind. Even Erica's brother, Daryl, said the family had been watching Zachary's Facebook page for about a month. And what they saw there was unsettling, because Zachary had made it clear that something was building, something dangerous. Meanwhile, Erica's family were devastated because while police were racing to track Zachary and arrest him, he was online, leaving messages that showed just how far gone he really was. It was like he had lost control and wanted the world to know it. But as police continued building their case, Zachary would also be found. He was located nearly a mile away from the home. He was arrested and taken into custody by Centerline and Warren police. Authorities also revealed another important detail. They said Zachary was not legally allowed to possess a firearm because of a previous weapons conviction. So before investigators even reached the question of what happened inside Erica's home, there was already another legal issue involving the weapon. Zachary was charged with second-degree felon in possession of a firearm, felon in possession of ammunition, 3 counts of felony firearm. During his court appearance, prosecutors described the shooting as a act. They said Zachary shot Erica in the back of the head, while 3 minor children were inside the home. They also pointed to the alleged actions after the shooting as evidence of what they described as a disturbing level of coldness. Zachary's bond was also denied, meaning he would stay in custody while the legal process continued. He was scheduled to appear before a judge for a probable cause conference, which is to determine whether sufficient evidence exists to proceed to trial. On April 8, 2026, the court ruled there was enough evidence to bind Zachary Fuqua over for trial in Macomb County Circuit Court. As of July 2026, Zachary remains in custody, waiting for his trial on charges that could make him spend the rest of his life in prison. But for Erica's family, no sentence could truly fix what had happened. No punishment given to Zachary could give those children their mother back. No court decision could erase the memory of that night. The family is left with a lifetime of wondering what could have happened differently. Erica's brother, Daryl Adams, spoke about the pain his family was experiencing. He said they still did not fully understand what happened. All they knew was that an argument happened, and suddenly Erica was gone. But he said the hardest part was thinking about Erica's children, because while adults could try to understand the situation, her kids were the ones who would have to grow up without their mother. He also wished he had been able to talk to Zachary before things reached that point. He said he hoped Zachary would have gotten the help he needed before someone lost their life.
And I wish I had opportunity to talk to him before it led to this point.
But now, that opportunity is gone, and Erica was gone too. What is more unsettling is in all of this, no one could answer why Zachary did it. Police and prosecutors have not publicly revealed a complete motive. Zachary Fuqua had been dealing with personal struggles after his mother died. His social media posts showed someone who appeared to be overwhelmed by grief and frustration. But after Erica was killed, those same posts took on a different meaning. Could it be that they were signs that something more serious was coming? But for Erica's family, the focus was never only on what Zachary was going through. The focus was on Erica, a mother who had 4 children depending on her. A person who should have had many more years ahead of her. Zachary had been showing signs online that he was struggling emotionally in the weeks before the killing. Some of his posts suggested that he was going through a difficult time after losing his mother. Some people argued that those posts showed someone who was overwhelmed and needed help. They believed the warning signs should have been taken seriously. But others pushed back against that idea, because no matter what someone is going through, many people argue that it does not excuse taking another person's life. And for Erica's family, the focus was simple. A woman was dead, 4 children lost their mother, and someone has to be held responsible. As heartbreaking as Erica Sanders' story is, the hardest part to accept is that her case was not the only tragedy. Because thousands of miles away in Pensacola, Florida, another mother was living a story that carried the same painful warning signs. Star Michael Tucker was a 30-year-old mother, a United States Air Force service member, a nursing student, and someone who spent her life taking care of others. Just like Erica, Star was the kind of person people described as loving, hardworking, and devoted to her child. But behind the smiles, behind the pictures, and behind the relationships that looked perfect from the outside, both women were facing something they never expected. Just like Erica, Star Michael Tucker was also in her 30s. To the people closest to her, she was simply Star, a name that matched the way they saw her. Someone who stood out. But Star's childhood was not always easy. At a young age, she and her siblings were adopted by the Campbell family in Moore Park, California. And for Star, that adoption became a new beginning. The Campbells believed in keeping the family together, and they welcomed Star and her brothers and sisters into their home with love. And Star never took that for granted. She embraced the opportunity she was given and built a life that made the people around her proud. After high school, she made the decision to attend Florida A&M University, where she studied psychology. But college was also where Star experienced some of life's biggest emotional moments. Because while she was building her future, she would also be dealing with painful losses. In 2015, the same year she proudly earned her psychology degree, just like Zachary, Star would lose her biological mother. Even though she had been raised by the Campbell family, she had been close to her mother, and losing her left a pain that never fully disappeared. But that was not the first major loss Star had experienced. Years earlier, in 2010, she had also lost her older sister to breast cancer. Those moments could have broken anyone. But Star continued pushing forward. She carried those memories with her and used them as motivation to keep building a meaningful life. And here's where her story draws a haunting resemblance to Erica Sandar's case. Because Zachary too had lived through the kind of losses that can shape a person forever. He lost his father at just 13, and decades later, his mother. However, when it came to Star, those losses became fuel for her to keep pushing. But for Zachary, his losses became cracks in the foundation of his life, cracks that widened until they swallowed him whole. Eventually, another chapter would start for Star, a kind of chapter that brought her a different kind of happiness. In early 2017, Star discovered she was pregnant. For her and her boyfriend, it was exciting news. He had even proposed to her during their gender reveal party. They were starting a family, and for a moment, everything looked perfect.
Okay, y'all turn around. Turn around! It's a boy! Okay. It's a boy! I knew it was a boy. Oh my gosh.
However, after their son was born in December 2017, the relationship fell apart. But Star had a baby who needed her focus. While Star was building her life as a mother, she was also building an impressive career. She joined the United States Air Force and eventually became a senior airman, working as a medic with the 919th Special Operations Medical Squadron at Duke Field, Florida. She had a clean record and earned the respect of those who served alongside her. But Star was not finished chasing her dreams. In 2021, she started nursing school, working toward another major goal. She also became the head volleyball coach at Robert F. Monroe High School, where she continued doing what she loved to do, helping others grow. However, in all of what Star had achieved, there was still one thing she wanted. She wanted someone to share her life with. Someone who would love her the way she believed she deserved. And that desire for love would eventually lead her to Charles Jerome Carson Dowdy. And Charles appeared online to be searching for the same thing. He wanted a real connection, the kind of relationship that felt different. But what Star did not know was that behind the attention, behind the affection, and behind the public displays of love, there was something much darker developing. And the same man who made her feel chosen would become the person investigators say destroyed everything. Investigators later discovered the story Charles presented to the world was not the complete picture. Charles was 30 years old and originally from Pritchard, Alabama. He grew up in a large family, one of 10 children who his mother had raised. After high school, he moved to Dallas, Texas, where he worked as an environmental technician and began building a life of his own. Like Star, Charles was also a parent. He had a son born in 2020, and another child born in 2023. But unlike Star, who kept much of her personal life private, Charles was very much active online. He openly posted on social media about struggling, especially when it came to relationships. He would post about feeling disappointed with dating and wanting something genuine, and about searching for someone who truly understood him. To the people watching from the outside, it seemed like Charles was simply someone looking for love, someone who was tired of failed relationships. And that was when he met Star. He had found her through Facebook dating. After that, everything changed. It seemed the frustration disappeared, because Charles stopped posting complaints. He seemed to have found someone who fascinated him. His followers too began seeing a different side of him. The man who once complained about finding love was now constantly posting about how happy he was, how grateful he was to have found Star, how Star was different from the other women he had dated. The two began spending more and more time together, and for a while, everything looked like the beginning of something beautiful. But behind those happy moments, something else was starting to appear. Something that many people, just like in the case of Zachary, would only recognize after it was too late. Charles's love began to look less like affection and more like obsession. He would repeatedly describe how crazy he was about Star. At first, those words might sound harmless. Many people use intense language when they are excited about someone. But looking back after what happened, those words took on a much darker meaning. Because investigators believe Charles's attachment to Star became unhealthy. He was not just afraid of losing her. He seemed unable to accept the possibility that she could choose a life without him. Then came a post that would later stand out as deeply disturbing. Just days before Star would be killed, Charles uploaded a video where he dressed as an inmate and talked about committing a crime for love. At the time, it might have seemed like a strange performance, maybe even brushed off as dark humor, maybe even a way to get attention online. But after Star's death, those moments became something many could just ignore. Because, looking back now, that video was a warning from the mind of a man who was already spiraling. This kind of behavior mirrored exactly what Zachary did before he killed Erica Sanders. Zachary too had gone on social media to post cryptic messages that revealed his unraveling state of mind. Both men used online platforms not just to vent, but to broadcast their instability, almost daring the world to notice. By December 2024, Star and Charles still looked inseparable. On Charles's 30th birthday, Star even surprised him with a PlayStation 5 for Christmas. But only weeks later, the same relationship that looked full of love would end in unimaginable tragedy. According to investigators, by January 2025, Star had begun feeling overwhelmed by Charles's behavior, and she wanted out of it. She wanted to leave. Charles was beginning to show some behaviors that she didn't recognize. She wanted to move forward. But just like Zachary, Charles did not accept that. Investigators say one of his biggest fears Charles had was that Star might return to the father of her child, the man who had once proposed to her. To Charles, that possibility became something he could not handle. And according to authorities, that jealousy and anger reached a deadly point. On January 2nd, 2025, everything would change. What started as an argument would become a crime that shocked an entire community. At around 8 at night, Star and Charles were at the parking lot of her apartment complex on 9 Mile Road when an argument started. Charles, who had made up his mind that Star couldn't leave him, easily decided that if he couldn't have her then no other person could, did the most cowardly thing people like him do. He shot Star right there in the parking lot. Neighbors in the apartment where Star lived began to hear something terrifying. Someone was shooting a gun multiple times. When they came out to see what was happening, they were met with a gruesome scene. Star had been and was unconscious. They started trying to help her as much as they could. They immediately began calling the police. When the officers arrived, they would find something heartbreaking that would not leave their memory for a very long time. Star was found outside her apartment complex. She had been 15 times. She was immediately rushed to the hospital for medical treatment. But just as Erica didn't make it, so did Star. She would not survive. The woman who had spent her life caring for others was gone. But the horror of that night did not end there, because what investigators would later say was something no one could have imagined happened to Star. After Star was shot multiple times, Charles had used her own vehicle, a Jeep Cherokee, to drive her as he tried to leave. If you think that was all, then what I am about to tell you would leave you cold. Charles then put the Jeep in reverse and drove over the second time, before he finally drove away. It was as if he wanted to make sure Star had no way of surviving his attack. I want you to really think about that for a moment. Star's had not only shot her 15 times, but now decided to run over her body twice before leaving her to die. How cruel can anyone be to commit such a horrifying act? After Charles left the scene, investigators did not have to start from zero. They had camera footage that showed Star's. It was clearly Charles Carson Doughty, but they had a major question. Where would Charles run to? But the answer to that question is about to reveal a hidden past of Charles. Not even Star knew. Charles was not the person many people believed him to be. In court records later shown, Charles had previous legal issues. In 2023, he had been arrested in Mobile, Alabama. He was also a wanted man in Texas for an assault case. Detectives thought since Charles was on the run, there could only be one place he could freely go to without judgment. That place was Alabama, his parents' home, where he had grown up. Florida authorities shared information with officers in Alabama to watch out for him. However, Charles, who had now crossed Florida and entered Alabama, decided to update his social media fans with a disturbing post. At around 3 in the morning, he posted, "It's been real, y'all." Then another one, few minutes later, "Y'all ever had something happen so f***ed up that you can't even cry about it?" For a moment, he seemed to have come to terms with what he had done, and now had to pay the price. While the messages appeared to show Charles was struggling emotionally, they also confirmed something important for investigators. Charles was still active, and he was still somewhere out there. Then, an unexpected mistake changed everything. Charles's escape came to an end because of something ordinary, a flat tire. After driving away from the scene and running away to Alabama, Charles's Jeep eventually became disabled. Instead of continuing to run, investigators say he made a decision that would lead police directly to him. He called for roadside assistance. That single phone call gave detectives a tip of exactly where he was. Officers immediately drove to the location near Ralph and Cuckoo's on the causeway. When police arrived, they found Charles waiting, but instead of the assistance he had called for, it was the police who surrounded him. According to authorities, Charles did not resist arrest. He just opened the vehicle's console, surrendered his weapon, and reportedly said, "My life is over." That was how Charles Carson Doughty was found, over a flat tire. He was arrested and was taken into custody. He was later extradited back to Escambia County, Florida, where he faced a charge of second-degree murder. He was also held without bond, but even after his arrest, investigators uncovered more information about what happened after Star was. According to the arrest report, Charles contacted the father of Star's young son. The message was short: "Star is," but he did not explain what happened. He did not provide details of how he was the one who killed her. He simply delivered the devastating news. But as word spread about what Charles had done, one of his former co-worker began to realize something was wrong. They saw details about the apartment complex as that of Star and Charles, and became concerned. So he had reached out to Charles, pretending to check on him. During their conversations, Charles had allegedly admitted what he had done. He claimed he had Star multiple times during a moment of rage. After the call, the co-worker immediately contacted authorities. And following instructions from law enforcement, the co-worker continued communicating with Charles so he could tell him where he was, and Charles did. Charles eventually told them that he was stranded under a bridge after his vehicle had gotten a flat tire as he was trying to make his way toward Mobile. He also told the co-worker he was afraid to surrender. But by then, investigators knew exactly where he was, and that was how the search came to an end. The news of Star's death devastated everyone who knew her. Her family struggled to understand how someone who had brought so much love into the world could be taken away so violently. Her sister Dominique shared a heartbreaking message.
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't have all the right words. I'm tired. I haven't slept. I heard the heat. I'm just exhausted. I feel like I'm in a nightmare.
She also talked about the woman Star truly was. She described Star as more than a sister. She was a best friend, someone who played an important role in her life. And for the people closest to Star, that was the hardest part. They were not just mourning a victim, they were mourning a person who had so much more life left to live. Her son Braylon lost the person who meant the most to him, a mother who had spent years building a future for him, a mother who wanted him to grow up knowing he was loved. And while her life was taken far too soon, the people who loved her continue to carry her memory forward. Charles Carson Dowdy was eventually sentenced in a federal courtroom to life in prison without parole for the murder of Star Tucker. Following a guilty plea, the judge orders all sentences to run concurrently. 2 different women, 2 different states, and 2 different lives. Yet the heartbreaking pattern between Erica Sanders and Star Michael Star Tucker is almost impossible to ignore. Both women were mothers who were trying to build better futures for themselves and their children. But when they tried to leave a relationship that had turned toxic, the men could not accept losing control. And perhaps one of the most disturbing similarities between their stories is that, looking back, there were signs that something was wrong. Before their death, their partners had both posted troubling messages online that showed that they had been going through something serious in the weeks before the shooting. But those warning signs remained online until tragedy struck. At the time, some of those posts may have looked like emotional expressions, dramatic words, or someone simply going through a difficult moment. But after both women lost their lives, people were left looking back and asking the same painful question: could these signs have been recognized sooner? Erica and Star's stories are painful reminders that danger does not always announce itself clearly. Sometimes it appears through changes in behavior, controlling actions, threats disguised as jokes, or messages that seem easy to dismiss until it is too late. Erica should still be here today, raising her children and watching them grow. Star should still be here today, serving her country and being the mother her son needed. Their stories show us that love should never become possession, and someone's decision to leave should never become a reason for violence. Do you think someone close to Erica or Star should have stepped in when their partners began showing signs of anger and obsession? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Click on one of the cards on your screen to watch more stories like this. See you in the next one.